Hello and welcome to the Conversation Cafe. My name's Beth Turner. I'm a communication coach for young people, and this is where I come to do two things. I create content directly for young people, which helps them gain conversational confidence in a variety of all sorts of everyday situations. But I also create content directly for parents linked to the same topics I've been discussing with the kids, but look at those topics through a parental lens. And in this video, I want to share two skills with you that I use as a parent linked to handling awkward silences and learning not to interrupt your kids when they are speaking. Now, I'm sure I'm not alone as a parent who wants to make sure that I, as often as possible, create a space where my kids feel that they can come and talk to me about anything that's troubling them, and that I will be able to hold a space for them to talk to me about it without disempowering them. And I'll give them the space to come to their own conclusions about the next steps. And I'll be able to guide them without instructing them on what to do in all of the situations that they might face. And there's two things that I've learned work to my benefit in those scenarios. The first is when it comes to handling silences, because what I've come to learn is that in a kid's world, there's two sets of information. There's information that feels safe and low risk to share with a parent, but also there's information that feels slightly riskier and slightly less confident to share. And what I found is that my kids will often put those pieces of information either side of a silence. So they might be discussing something with me, and they'll share all the easy stuff first, the stuff that feels low risk to them, and then there'll be a silence. And what I used to do is I used to either end the conversation because I saw that silence as the conversation coming to a natural close, or I would move on to a different topic, or I would share my opinion of whatever it was that we were talking about. But almost by accident, a few times I let that silence just sit. And I was surprised in every scenario that played out, what came next. Because what I realized was in the silence of that conversation, my kids were doing a few things. They were just running through in their mind whether they felt courageous or brave enough to share the more risky information, whether they were also trying to work out what sort of mood I was in, whether I'd be receptive to hear it, and whether they even wanted to talk about it. And in every scenario where I just let that silence sit and made it my intention that the next voice I would hear would be theirs, I've never regretted it. Because what comes after the silence is information that I really wanted to know. It's the stuff that really worries them, and that they want advice and guidance on, but they need to warm up to sharing with you. So I don't know if you have been in any situation like that where your kids will bring a topic up and they'll gently be feeling their way around it. And sometimes you feel like there's more they want to say, but they sort of choose not to. If ever you get the situation where they have a silence and a pause, don't rush in to see it as an indication that they want to change the subject or leave the conversation. Just let it sit. And my advice would be to stay quiet, and where you can, stay still. Try not to break the thought pattern that internal discussion they're having as to whether they should share it, how they'll actually say it, what your reaction might be. And make it your job that the next voice that is heard after the silence is theirs. Because sometimes it can be a little bit daunting as to what they might share with you. And we worry about our kids' lives and their experiences so much. But what I've learned is whatever it takes a few minutes to listen to in those scenarios saves me hours and hours sorting out a problem later down the line. So when it comes to handling those silences, that's what I would suggest. The other thing that I've seen a benefit of is not interrupting my kids and ending their sentences. And I think I did this for a long time because, quite frankly, when they're younger, there's a lot of repetition and we're busy people. And sometimes I would imagine and assume that I knew what was going to be said at the end of their sentence. So either I would finish the sentence for them, or I would answer them and move on. And what I realized was when I interrupted their sentences or finished their sentences for them, it gave them a message that actually I wasn't that interested. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I wasn't very interested, but actually a lot of the time I was. And what I've learned is that you never can quite imagine what might come at the end of that sentence. Even if you've got a really close relationship with your kids, and you could, put money on the fact that how that sentence will end or how that story will finish, just resist the urge if you can to finish the sentence. Just spend those few extra seconds, engage with them. And even if the conversation, that sentence, it pans out exactly as you imagine, in that moment, it says to your kids that they are important to you, what they're saying is important to you, and that you are prepared to give them the time it takes to finish talking to you. And who knows, at the end of that sentence might have been one of those pauses, one of those silences that I mentioned earlier in this video. And we all know that what comes after the silence is the stuff that we really do need to know and ought to want to know as parents. So a few top tips from me about handling silences in conversation with your kids, and also fighting the urge to finish their sentences and interrupt them when they speak. I hope you found the content of this video useful, and I look forward to seeing you back here in the Conversation Cafe very soon.